Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion. I welcome our esteemed panelists today, Shri Sudhir Garg, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise, Government of India, Dr. Rajat Kathuria, Director and Chief Executive, Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relation, Mr. Sanjay Singh, Vice President, CD Asia. Welcome all to today's panel discussion. My name is Arun Singh, and I'm an economist with Dun Bradstreet. Today, we are going to discuss a very exciting and very interesting subject, and which is very apt and suitable to the current environment. Welcome all to today's panel discussion. In fact, I'm looking forward to a much insightful and knowledgeable panel discussion. There is an opportunity in every crisis. This statement often been used at multiple times, and there are many other related statements we have seen, and that's what basically defined today what's happening. The ongoing pandemic has revealed the fault lines in the current model of global supply chain and has helped us realize the importance of self-reliance. Indian businesses have shown tremendous resilience to the nimble and adopt quickly to a fast changing market and the challenges and opportunities it has thrown up in the last couple of months. Production of bottle dispensers has now increased to 30 lakhs pieces a day from just 5 lakhs before COVID 19. From zero manufacturers in March 2020 to more than 1,000 indigenous manufacturers of PPE kits have been developed by the government till date, most of them being from MSME sector. MSMEs have also helped India in achieving self-sufficiency in hand sanitizing materials and have contributed immensely in the producing auxiliary items like mask, face shields, sanitizer box, testing facilities, and other item related. However, for India to position itself as a major manufacturing hub, it is critical that India's business environment shifts. The SME sector is riddled with the numerous challenges, which we all aware of. In fact, we are engaged with the MSME last 15 years and reaching out to them, uh, asking them what are the challenges they face. Unfortunately, some of the challenges are consistently repeated every year. And in fact, that's are underserved in many ways. And what's happening is one of the major concern is like, you know, today nearly 70% of the addressable SME debt demand in India remains unmet. The percentage of e-commerce sales to total retail sales stands at 2% in India compared to around 14% globally. For every 100 entities, 95 belongs to the micro category and only 4 belongs to the small and medium category, and just less than 1 to the large category. What we call this is a missing middle. To achieve our vision of AtmaNirbhar Bharat, India needs to nurture the SME segment and help them confront the problems of low productivity and the missing middle in the optics of India distribution. Let's deliberate more on this subject. I will start with my first question to Mr. Uh, Garg. Uh, my first question to you, there is very high preponderance of firms that are in the micro and small segment. What measures do we need to help the SME sector to grow, that is from small sectors to the medium firms, and finally from medium firms to the large firms? Because we want to sail through this crisis as soon as possible. What are the measures you feel we can do?
Good evening to everybody, and it's a pleasure to be part of this group, a group which is highly dynamic and is a pillar of the modern India. Well, we in the ministry are very well aware that it is the SME sector, the micro and small sector, which can really do a transformation of the economy. Word over it has shown that because of the dynamism in the small, medium, small and micro sectors, things have changed much faster. If you take the example of the Western world, there was a group of people there who were dynamic, who were innovators, who were doing things in a different manner. And that's how they turned around and made their country global leaders in many of the areas. And that is the concept we had to adopt in our country as well. If you see the change that is happening, there was a time when best of the students from IITs and other colleges used to go to Western world, America, Europe. Then there was a change and they started becoming part of the bureaucracy. Now, a big change that is happening is that they are all starting going for startups. So the best of the intellects are now coming up to the startups, and that is the force, that is the change which is happening. And I'm pretty sure, I believe that this will really roll into big, big companies. Now, the ministry really understand that there's a lot of handholding required to the SME sector. And for that, we have multi-pronged policies, frameworks. And first of the things that we think is that when we think of SME, then we think of a person with less resources. So for that, we are trying to create a technological infrastructure where all the people can go, give shape to their ideas, play with their ideas, and then they can also use these facilities into plug and play mode without setting up any manufacturing facilities. They can use these facilities to start their businesses. So these are called technology centers, which we are setting up across the country. This country already have 18 technology centers. We are now building 15 more at a cost of around 3,000 crore. Out of that, 13 have already started functioning. And government has given further sanction to start 120 more such centers across the country at a cost of around 6,000 crore, taking these technology centers up to the district level. So this is one peer. Second, we believe is that unless people join hands, they will not be able to grow. So we have schemes like MSc Sleep and Sfurti, where small scale or micro enterprises, they can join hands and they can seek assistance from the government up to rupees 20 crores in a single facility where a high-end technology facility can be supported by the government of India, and they can really join hand and they can use this common facility to create new solutions for themselves and become really competitive. And the third approach we have is that to build their other capabilities like process changes, like technology, like so one process change when we say that lean manufacturing is one common thing available across the world, which really builds your competitiveness easily by 30%. Your output grows by 30%. Then design capability. So we have a scheme called Design Clinic where 80% support is provided. Under the lean scheme also we provide 80% funding. So these kind of schemes are available through which the MSME sector can take help and then grow bigger. And I can tell you that people are really taking help of it. And I share a small story. I was in Pune and I was talking to a group of industrialists and I said, how are you using the benefit from the MSME ministry? And one gentleman said that he has used the lean scheme. Before using the lean scheme, his mobile used to keep on ringing. Now, after adoption of the lean, he is able to devote time for various other activities like marketing, finance, and things like that. So this is one thing that we're talking about the technology side. Then similarly on the marketing side. So we are providing various platforms for selling their products, and like KVIC is providing a lot of support. And in the ministry, we are thinking something more on those fronts. In addition, we provide assistance for domestic and international showcasing their products. They can participate, and funding up to 50% is given to these enterprises. And third is most important, the finance. So we have various schemes like CGT MSc is one important scheme where they are supported by the government of India to where they take a lot of loans. For those loans, we provide support under this scheme. And yes, 30 lakh uh, crores scheme which has been announced by the this is 3 lakh crore which has been announced by Honorable PM, in which MSMEs can take loan, and already 1.5 lakh crore has been disbursed in that scheme. So these are the various steps that we are taking so that MSMEs can take help of these schemes and can grow bigger, better, and faster.
Thank you, Mr. Garg. That was really good, insightful from the policymaker side. And I mean, I'll come back to the technology center question because there's some question coming up on that. So I will ask you later. But now I think there's a reference to the historical stuff. So I thought let me go to Dr. Kathuria with the same concept of Dr. Kathuria. My next question is to you. That AtmaNirbhar Bharat is, it's basically touted as essential for India's global competitiveness, and that's rightly said that at least there are initiatives taken to consistently, to ensure that we are basically globally competitive. In fact, this ideology was, you know, was there to some extent post independence until 1980s. The outcome was the opposite of the intended. Industrial upgradation was prolonged and India did not gain competitive advantage. So, in your opinion, what factors are different this time that will make this policy a great success? And Indian SME sector achieve a global competitiveness?
Thank you, Arun, for inviting me to this show. Thank you, Dun Bradstreet. And it's a privilege to be on the same panel as Mr. Sudhir Garg and Mr. Sanjay Singh. And I think, Arun, you've asked a very, very important question. And I think what Mr. Sudhir Garg said and what you said in the introduction, that the micro, small, and medium enterprises are really the backbone of any economy, both in terms of technology, both and in terms of exports, as well as in terms of creating employment. Every country before us, whether it was China, whether it was Korea or Japan, have bloomed on the back of small and medium enterprises that have begun to export and therefore have been able to create employment, have been able to become globally competitive, and therefore have helped in the takeoff of these countries to double-digit growth. And I think if India is to aspire to double-digit growth, or even close to double-digit growth that we were aspiring to before the pandemic, if India is to aspire to those high rates of growth, I think there will have to be a completely sort of vibrant small and medium enterprises sector. There's no gainsaying the fact that small and medium enterprises will be the instrument of growth and the instrument of takeoff. And I say that for two reasons especially, and both are related to the question that you've asked, Arun. One is that India has to create productive jobs in the future. I think every policy that India needs to look at has to be looked at from the lens of job creation, given our demographics. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think job creation is absolutely essential for our economy, and small and medium enterprises can be the vehicle through which jobs are created. And secondly, in order to become globally competitive, again, small and medium enterprises will be the answer to our global competitiveness. So if you have to look at both job creation and competitiveness, and then look at AtmaNirbhar Bharat and try and compare this AtmaNirbhar Bharat with what we did in the 70s and 80s. And I think it is different today. If we actually go back to what we did in the 70s and 80s, then I think we will degenerate into protectionism. A lot of people have been saying that this looks like protectionism, but I don't think it is the same kind of protectionism that we had in the 70s and 80s. Those of us who have lived in India in the 70s and 80s recognize very quickly that protectionism was actually insidious in the economy because it allowed manufacturers, as you yourself said, that manufacturers became very concentrated, and it gave us the result exactly the opposite of what we wanted. And the reason was because it was a protected market. You could actually sell anything at high prices to a captive audience. And you certainly don't want that to happen today. And I don't think we fear that is happening, that is going to happen today. India is a very different economy from the 70s and 80s. We have a lot of foreign direct investment. We have a lot of competition within the domestic market. Look at automobiles, look at the telecom sector, look at the electronic sector, look at the peripheral sector. So there is a lot of competition. It is very, very different from what happened in the 70s and 80s. So I think we need to dispel the fact that this AtmaNirbhar Bharat is definitely not the same as what was in the 70s and 80s. But we also need to be cautious of the fact that this AtmaNirbhar Bharat, which we are looking at the lens of job creation and global competitiveness, doesn't become protectionist. And the reason why a number of people are thinking that this could become protection is because tariffs in the last few budgets, tariffs especially on certain products, and you can look at furniture, you can look at electronics, tariffs have been rising. And I would suggest that even if we increase tariffs and components and try and reverse what we have called the inverted duty structure, we should resist the temptation of trying to use tariffs as an instrument to improve competitiveness. I think our purpose will be better served by creating an enabling domestic environment rather than resorting to increasing tariffs to improve competitiveness. Because remember, if you increase tariff, it is like an export tax. So if you are, there is a theorem in economics and trade, which is called the Lerner theorem. If you increase import duties, you are actually taxing exports. So it's not a good way to become globally competitive. It's not a good way to begin to use India as an export base. And what will happen in India is that as production becomes more competitive, value addition automatically will go up, just like it happened in China. So we should not impose any conditions in the beginning of value addition. Value volumes can be the first stage, and then over time, just like it has happened in other countries, value addition of small and medium enterprises, etc., will grow up, and we can become therefore globally competitive. So I would say that create a better enabling environment, just like Mr. Sudhir Garg has identified all those things that have been identified. We need to create a better enabling environment for our medium, small, and micro enterprises. And two, very crucial, that resist the temptation of trying to use tariffs as an instrument to promote Make in India, because then it will achieve exactly the opposite result. Because once you put a tariff in place, it becomes really difficult, as we have seen, as you yourself have said, Arun, it becomes very difficult to undo that. And of course, it also sort of affects our compliance with the WTO. But notwithstanding that, it really affects the competitiveness of our domestic industry.
No, thank you, Dr. Kathuria. And in fact, I tell you that I personally was working on to find out the low productivity in India in those days, and how even the Eastern European countries or other Asian tigers have basically, crossed us. And there was many reasons we basically got, and what rightly pointed out. And I think this time we have a good learning, and it's just basically how we can execute so as we can get the intended outcome. Now, from a execution perspective, I'm coming to you, Mr. Singh, that now you are basically at a recipient end. I can say that, running a company, running a factory. And from that perspective, my first question is that a self-reliant India, or the AtmaNirbhar Bharat, stands on the 5 major foundation of economy, infrastructure, technology, demography, and demand, basically. How can MSME sector, from a recipient and from a part of that sector, how MSME sector achieve the vision of growth-driven India by banking on these pillars?
Thank you, Ankar, and good evening, Mr. Garg, Kathuria Sahab, and all fellow panelists. It's great to be here discussing on such an important subject, in which we are a traveler. We are representing a small scale sector. So, referring to a study, Financial Express News, that all these almost 4,000 of listed companies, they have done splendidly nice in the last quarter. They have booked a very good profit, all these listed companies, and by cutting down their costs, etc. So that in turn indicates, so once this cost cutting is done by the largest sectors, so that gives the impact to the MSME sectors. And we are into that, and we are feeling and we are observing that due to that cost cutting of the large sectors, MSME in reality is in a very squeezed position. They have lesser orders, they have more competition, they have extra expenses they have done in last 8-9 months of pandemic closure. So MSME sector is very important. There is nothing new. Everyone accepts, it is known worldwide. We also accept this is the largest generator of employment, and they come to the occasion. Recently, we have seen that all these masks and sanitizers and all, and maybe coming time distribution of this medicine, etc. Everything will be, MSME will be involved this way or that way. So MSME sector, they always come to the occasion, rise to the occasion, and they deliver the things in a very quicker and faster way. So now, accepting that the sector is in crisis, I can say. So already as explained by Mr. Garg and whatever the news are coming through, government has already taken certain initiatives. And in view of these 5 pillars of the economy, infrastructure, technology, and demographic and demand pillars, MSME sector, to our knowledge and to best of our experience, I can only say that environment and sustainability should be the common factor for all these four or 5 pillars. The time has gone that you take, make, and waste. This is true for large sectors as well as the small sectors as well. But it is more important for the smaller sector, which has got a very limited resources, limited money supply, limited orders, limited profitability. So sustainability and recycling, taking care of the environment is very, very important for all the MSME to move on this AtmaNirbhar Bharat so that they can sustain their growth path in a longer term. Now, as the MSME sector, they have got so many shortcomings, so many leverages they have to take. They do not have all the facilities which the big umpires are enjoying. They do not have contacts, they do not have any audience. But still, the only way is left to them is to do the business in a renewed atmosphere, and they have to take the initiative so that they can sustain in the coming times. There is no shortage of talent and intent within the MSME sector. Only thing is required is they have to be considered by all the authorities like Government of India or the state government to give them support in all the fields they require, and they should have an ambience and audience to get their grievance solved. That is what I can add to this.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for that insightful comment. And in fact, that's coming directly from the sector participant, and that's basically make a lot of point that you are basically using and you are in the sailing through that issues and concern and that opportunity basically are presented by COVID-19. And in fact, coming to the opportunity presented by COVID-19, one opportunity is basically for Indian companies and for any other global companies, basically a supply chain realignment of the supply chain, and that's what basically happening at this sort of time. That's my that's my next question to Garg sir. That in fact, this COVID-19 pandemic has a trigger what you call a trend of nearshoring and reorientation of the global supply chain. And there's a lot of discussion happening around it. And in fact, right from April or May, there's been a lot of initiative taken by government on in that front, and there are a lot of discussion happening around this. India certainly is viewed as a bright spot for business relocation. What initiative have been planned for SME sector to make the most use of this what you call a global realignment, because company basically they want to shift the base without impacting their current global supply chain framework.
Yeah, I think it's a very great opportunity, and as we say that every disruption is a door for growth, is a growth engine by itself. COVID-19 has really made us think differently. And one of the things which we now find is that Government of India and Honorable PM has been uh, directing and has been requesting for everybody to adopt digitization in a faster manner. And what we found in last 6 months, the growth of digitization has been what has happened in last 5 to 6 years. So I just want to share one small story here, rather two stories. One, recently I was talking to a friend of mine who is a chartered accountant, and I asked him how the business is doing. So he said, yes, businesses are coming back to their uh, normal position, but there's a change which he's seeing. And the change is that some businesses are growing faster and some are finding it difficult to continue. And then further he explained that all those businesses who have adopted digitization are growing very fast. They are not able to meet the demand of the people. And that took me back to 1990 when I was posted in Varanasi, and I was talking to one shopkeeper in Gadolia. Gadolia is a famous market where
Yeah.
study shops are there.
Right, right.
So I asked him that what is his son doing. He said it's a very interesting story. My son was not doing much. We were worried what will he do. And then one day he said, I want to buy a computer. And mind you, in those days, computer used to cost around 60,000 rupees. My salary was 3,000 rupees in those days. So he bought a computer. And after 6 months, they realized that their sale has grown up. So they started looking what has happened. And they found that now with this computer, they know which person's sari sells best, where to place orders now, which customer is paying us good. So all those kind of things started happening. Now, this is a good thing which has happened. But the real thing which really happened was that when after another 6 months, everybody started noticing increased sale of this shop, then all other people said, what has happened to this shop? And they realized that he has put up a computer there. And that's why he is having increased sale. And he is now tells me that everybody in 6 months had a computer in his shop. So that is the power of change. And I'm pretty sure that my MSME friends have that capability to change fast. Once they realize the benefit, they can change very, very fast. Now, my MSMEs are realizing the benefits of change, how digitization is really is going to build their capabilities, competitiveness. That is what we are now trying to push from the Government of India. The fourth industrial revolution is already there. We are moving ahead with that. We are not lagging the way we did in the first three industrial revolutions. So we are in the right place, right time. And our industry are ready to adopt these kind of changes. And we are trying to create an ecosystem in which we can provide facilitation at every step of manufacturing, from designing of the product, like simulation technologies, 3D printers, things like that. And then for marketing, then IoT-based technology so that they can have a right type of quality manufactured products. Also, all their supply chain is also integrated very well so that they can really have a very clear visibility what is happening on the shop floor, how they are connected very well, how they're taking best benefit out of the manpower, machines, and things like that. So this is one ecosystem we are trying to create, and we are sure that this ecosystem will really build the competitiveness of the industry. And once that happens, once we are more competitive, we are looking more smarter, then the global industry is going to come here. And another thing which we see as a change of this process is that the ancillary culture, which was pushing things from the top side, has to change to innovation oriented culture. And we believe that with the adoption of new technologies, industry will be able to move in the new era of innovation based, incubation oriented approach, and they will be able to create new products, new designs, which will be globally accepted, and people will be able to use our intellect in a different manner. I believe you already are aware that India has 1,250 global R&D center. So we are the intellect capital of the world. So with that, we have to really use those intellectuals, those intellect power which is available with every Indian. We have to encash upon that and then grow faster. That's what is the real theme on which we are trying to work. And the ministry has set up a small task force for Industrial 4.0. We are working on that, and we will be coming out with some policies so that we can provide more support to the industry for this Industry 4.0 technologies.
Thank you, Mr. Garg, and that was really good because I'll come back to Industry 4 because there's a related question was asked to you. Now, that's a related question to you, Dr. Kathuria. Is basically, I know I'm conscious about timing, but I'm trying to rush. So that question basically to achieve the stated goal of make for the world and further integrate India into the global value chain, what basically, we are basically discussing. What are the policy priorities that the government needs to remain focused on?
So thanks, Ankur. So I think the policy choices, let me make sort of two sets of comments. One is what are the policy choices, and two is what are the sort of execution of those policies. Often what happens, and Mr. Sudhir Garg would be able to tell us, is that the government announces policies for small and medium enterprises, for micro enterprises, and often what happens, those policies, the execution of those policies, falls short of what is necessary. So I think one, a renewed focus on good execution, and I think the government has made a commitment to good execution, and I think that should continue. That good execution should continue in terms of the policies reaching the end user, policies reaching the end beneficiary. And just to digress for a moment, like direct benefit transfer that we said, that we kind of eliminate the transactions costs, eliminate a lot of leakages that happen in the middle, has been a good policy, and some of the benefits of that good execution are beginning to see them. And I think we should use, as Mr. Sudhir Garg is saying, we should try and use technology as much as possible to enable good execution of our policies. So I would sort of put a lot of emphasis on implementation as well, because the Achilles heel of India has often been implementation and not policy design. But on policy design as well, so what is it that will enable small and medium enterprises? I think going back to the points that have already been made, one is that why do small and medium enterprises or micro enterprises in India don't grow? Why is the firm dynamics in India such that there is an incentive to remain small? So we should look at that incentive world over. When Google started, or when Apple started, or when these, as Mr. Garg said, startups are happening, but they have to also grow and become big, because innovation is the hallmark of small companies, as you yourself said. These are the nimble companies. The big companies often are not very nimble. So we have to encourage these small startups. We have to encourage the ecosystem of startups, but also enable them to become big. Often what has happened in India, that small has remained beautiful for various policy constraints. And we should try and remove those policy constraints that small can become big, and then new small companies, new startups will come and tend to occupy that space. In China, apparently, it takes 5 years from the start for a firm to become really big. And in India, it would take 25 years to cover the same journey. So what I'm saying is there are incentives in India to remain small, and we should look at those incentives. Some of those incentives have been taken away because we had protection for small and micro enterprises. Some of those have been taken away. Give them positive incentives rather than negative incentives, and those positive incentives is what Mr. Garg has been talking about. Give them support, give them technology support, give them financial credit support, but don't create negative incentives which will disable them from becoming big. And once they become big, then they can create employment, then they can create productive employment as well. So I would emphasize that create an ecosystem where enterprises grow and try and reduce those transactions costs. And we are all, as we are familiar with all those power, connectivity, logistics, transactions costs, taxation problems, environmental problems, labor inspector problems. I mean, the whole host of those issues that we are all familiar with in India. I think those need to be addressed. And I would say if we are to become globally competitive and look at competition and export for small and medium enterprises, there is no harm in trying to look at strategies of exchange rate. I mean, we haven't really used exchange rate, and I know it's a provocative and it's a controversial thing in India. If you want to become globally competitive, China used exchange rate really well in order to become competitive. And I know that exchange rates have other impacts. It's not in a general equilibrium. If you use exchange rate for exports, then of course it's going to affect your imports as well. But we've never seriously considered or discussed using exchange rates as a mechanism for promoting export. So I would say, excuse me, focus on good implementation, but also try and address those policies which has incentivized enterprises to remain small. Get rid of those, and then also look at neutral policies like exchange rate across the board.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kathuria, and your statement is right. And in other countries, probably take just 5 years from a small company to company. I mean, in India, it's hard to even think about 25 years. I mean, sometimes it show other way around, because I was looking at the top 500 company in India for last 15 years. When I take a different cohort of that, 50% of the company got replaced. So that's good that the new company coming in, but there's a bad that there is no sustainable growth path. And other side, when I look at some of the data, that 40% of the company actually go out of business for every 10 to 15 years, which means I don't know whether the company was exist or not, or whether they did not pursue that way. So I can agree. I mean, in fact, I could agree with you what assessment about how from small to medium to large is basically so tricky in India, and sometimes it create a problem. And yeah, I know I'm conscious about time. So my last question to you, Mr. Singh, that now since in the part of MSME segment and beneficiary and recipient end, how can the AtmaNirbhar Bharat Abhiyan lay the foundation for a stronger Make in India 2.0 in the post-COVID-19 world?
It's good to note and share. Probably all of you must have witnessed yourself in this last Deepavali. After so many, right now I'm in your touch from Kolkata. So we had our Deepavali in the Kolkata, and after many years, this time traditionally we know that we worship Saraswati and Ganesh Ji on Deepavali Puja, and we get a idol for the market. After many years, this time we have a idol of Ganesh and Lakshmi of a normal eye size. Before that, it used to be all smaller in disproportionate smaller size. Why? Because all it used to come from China. So how fast these MSME and small sectors or micro sectors, they come up to the occasion, and the moment they could learn that this is the essential things and it will be sold, and there is some import restrictions or anti-import sentiments prevailing, they come up and they produced crores of idols like this within no time. So this is on their own of the MSME sector. So far as the government initiatives and concerns, I am very happy to say that already government has taken certain initiatives, and that is most likely to give us the result. But I can only submit and suggest that government has to be ready to get in touch with the MSME sector time to time at a very frequent intervals, so that their concerns are solved as soon as possible, as soon as they come. Being from the same sector, I can also suggest that there should be some emphasis on the export and import substitution done by the MSME sectors. There are ways and means for the other sectors and larger sectors to get their concerns resolved, but it's very difficult for the smaller MSME sector, because unfortunately they probably in a lighter note I can say they do not have salvage and sibbles. So their concerns are very difficult to get addressed. Even we are exporting almost 12 countries from our company, and exporting to the countries like Japan. And we feel that there is so much of restriction from the export and so much of restriction from RBI. Once you send a project to the outside country, and then after even as sending them a warranty claim or some damages, it becomes a Herculean task for us, and we do not know where to go and how to resolve and how to keep our customers happy. So this is the one concern. Second concern is the government should also think of the shouldering the responsibility of the making the life of MSME sector in their export and import, especially the RBI, that so much of restrictions are there. For a smaller companies, it's very difficult to do the exports. Third point, I can say that for export and import substitution, any company of any sector, they need to have this R&D sector. Mostly small sectors do not spend any money and energy and time in doing some R&D. But whosoever is interested to do and whosoever is capable of doing such things, government should take some initiative so that they can come up with a new technology on their own, which can substitute these future imports. And thirdly, whatever the decisions have already been taken, and all the decisions which are likely to come in the near future, government should take an initiative that should be come into a faster way. Initiatives are taken because as of now there is a directive that banks should lend the loans to the MSME sector on priority and all those things. But on the ground, probably it is not happening, or it's happening not up to the content or intent desired. These are the three, four suggestions I can take, that who can support the MSME sector, which is the backbone of any economy. Especially it is more true for the Indian economy, which is growing very on a faster speed, and which needs to support millions and millions of maybe uneducated and without job youngsters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for that insightful advice, and that's much appreciated. I know we are timed out, but there are a couple of questions coming from larger audience, and it's being put up there. is basically related to Mr. Garg, your comment on technology centers and industry 4.0, and that's very apt, and that's what, because when I was looking at data for 250 years, to be very honest, uh, before industry one started, India was something around third position of the top 7 countries of that time. As we progressed, industry 1, 2, 3, 4, now we are 7th in terms of per capita. Our ranking is much below, but those 6 countries are ahead of that. Is that something was wrong that we were not able to capitalize on that, and now we are almost on verge of industry 4.0, and that's what basically you talked about. So one question was that this technology center, that's huge investment being planned, is there any timeline for larger people to know that what when you're planning to be completed and how it can create a larger environment, and in fact that could benefit MSME? The second, that we are talking about technological revolution, what could be the potential bottlenecks that can be uh, overcome to ensure that our industry 4 initiatives are basically well supporting to MSME sector?
Yeah, to start with, I would like to reply to Mr. Sanjay Singh's point that the challenges MSMEs face in resolving their issues. So I would just like everybody to kindly take note of it that we have started a portal called champions.gov.in. I'll repeat, champions.gov.in. And we have 64 centers working across the country. So anybody can just go on this portal and put his or her complaint, and we will try to resolve these complaints quickly. So this is one. Secondly, we are in the ministry now having very dynamically, continuously having dialogue with various associations, various chambers of commerce, so that whatever issues are there, we should try to sort them out as quickly as possible. So we'll be very happy to remain engaged with you and look forward to listen from you on your problems, and we certainly will try to resolve those issues. That's one point. Now to the question of Dr. Arun on the technology centers. Now these technology centers, 15 which are to be created at a cost of rupees 3,000 crore, 13 have already become functional out of that. And in addition, 120 centers which are to be set up across the country, including 100 in districts. Out of that, again, 30 have started functioning, and rest are on the at various stages. But we hope that in next 2 to 3 years they'll start functioning. Now, there's another approach that we have adopted is that centers of excellences. So we are tying up with various IITs, NIITs, other central government bodies like IPRIT in Bangalore, like IIHR in Bangalore, for various other areas. And sector-specific centers of excellence have been created. I'll give example of coir industry. In coir, we have been exporting coir pith. Coir pith is a waste which was considered as a waste earlier. Now 1,100 crore worth export is happening annually. Now worldwide, people are doing more value addition into that and converting this 1,000 crore to 10,000 crore. So we are now strongly working with the industry to do the value addition here itself, so that we take our export from 1,000 crore to 10,000 crore. And for that, we have created 3 centers of excellence, one with IIT Madras, one with IPRIT Bangalore, and another with IIHR Bangalore, so that various specific products can be created and value addition can happen, and local to global, and vocal for local, and local to global. We can do both the things. So that's what we are trying to do, and we are uh, uh, not only these, in various other sectors also we are creating centers of excellence, and we are picking up such sectors which have the potential to grow to 10,000 crore and beyond. So very small sector, agarbatti. We have the largest production around 1,500 crores annually. And we are trying to see that how can we grow to 2,000 crore in this sector. So various raw material production, a lot of raw material coming from the outside. We are trying to put them inside within the country itself. So that's what we are trying to work. And another point which I would like to just talk about is that on the AtmaNirbhar Bharat, I think that the approach this time is on the AtmaNirbhar Bharat side is to build our own skills, build our own capabilities. And once we have the right skill, right capability, then we are in a right place to take benefit of what is happening globally. And with this approach only, we are trying to create the complete technological infrastructure across the country, obviously provide marketing support and also the financial support. So under this philosophy of, as Honorable PM said, that we have to build our own capability so that we can prove ourselves better than anybody else, rather than just putting, any protectionism or protection layers. So that is the approach, I think, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to work. And our continuous dialogue, the way we are doing, the way we are interacting today, earlier it was a nightmare to talk to 100 people, but today we are able to talk to thousands of people together. And our honorable minister has been talking to many, many more people across the country, across the world. So that kind of connect which has now been created, I think this will roll out into much, much more benefit that we are seeing. We're looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garg, and I think that was really, really insightful. And I'm sure that the people who are basically asking got a wonderful way forward, and of course they will keep engaged with that approach. And champions, in fact, I personally visited on the website. I was working, so that's really good initiative by the government of India to ensure that they reach to the larger participant. There's one question I mean, in fact, I know we're timed out, but to you, Dr. Kathuria, is basically, if you allow, I can ask. It's a very small question. I know, yeah. So it's basically from a research perspective that question is coming. Let's say over years, one concern very, very prominent, and it's coming up again and again. And I think that needs a serious attention from the financing perspective. I think that's the core of everything. Financing issue related to MSME, and I also mentioned that. You think from a research side, from a overall advisory, that what can be done, how private sector can help to ease some of the concerns which we are facing for a long point of time, so that at least MSME can get enough fund, enough money to move forward. Any advisory from your side? Yeah.
So I think from a research perspective, the MSME or the micro MSME sector is, as has been pointed out, it's a very heterogeneous sector. There are some really small entities which are essentially in the informal sector. And I think unorganized and informal sector, and the dominant share of India's micro and small enterprises are in the informal in terms of numbers, are in the unorganized and the informal sector. Now, where do these firms or where do these entities go to for getting credit? They certainly don't go to the formal banking system. They rely on their personal networks. They rely on friends and family. And at most, they would go to the NBFC sector. We know that a lot of loans have been made available to this cohort from the NBFC sector, the micro finance institutions. And I think strengthening the microfinance institutions post Maligam committee has been a great initiative of the government of India to be able to provide loans to such. But I think there will be multiple sources of loans to these entities in the sector, and some amount of formalization over a period of time will happen, and some of it will be, of course, good. But formalization will take time. But I'm hopeful that, as Mr. Garg has been saying, I'm hopeful that MSMEs get the rightful place they deserve in the Indian economy, because they do a lot of good service for the economy, and they should get their rightful place. Finance is only one of the problems that they face. I mean, they have a multitude of host of other problems that we've spoken about, and finance getting access to credit is only one of the problems, because they need marketing as well. They need to be able to market as well. So I think finance is a problem, and I think, as I said, there are multiple sources of finance, and some of it, when finance is available, it's available at very high rates of interest as well, especially from the informal market. So that needs to be addressed along with a sort of host of other issues. There's no one magic bullet, but from the point of view of research, we'd like to see how many SME, small and medium enterprises and micro enterprises, are graduating from the informal sources of funding to formal sources of funding, and what is a good way to make that transition happen. That would be an interesting question from a research perspective.
No, I understand, Dr. Kathuria, and that's reality. In fact, I was looking at data that in India, unfortunately, 99% of companies MSME sector, and 94% could be the unorganized sector. And unorganized sector is basically no trail of records, no trail of information. So, I mean, there could be some constraint, and that's basically much discussed and deliberated upon. And in fact, thank you, Dr. Kathuria, for taking that question. And with that, I would like to wrap up today's panel discussion. And I'm grateful and I'm thankful to all our panelists for wonderful session. Thank you, Mr. Garg. Thank you, Dr. Kathuria. Thank you, Mr. Singh, for all your insightful advice. And I do believe that our participant had a wonderful session. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Garg sahab.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathuria sahab.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Thank you, Mr. Garg.
Thank you. See you, sir. Sometime, somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ankur.
Thank you.
The last one thing, that how vibrant our youth today is, that in the current financial year, under the Prime Minister's Employment Guarantee Program, we got 30% more industry setting up proposals. And those proposals, many of these proposals are coming from people who have come back to their villages after this COVID, and they have started functioning also. Their business also started. And this year, the bank finance has also gone by almost 30% more to these new units, and they have started very quickly functioning as well. So that is a vibrancy which is happening down in the villages side, in the bottommost layer of the country. So I see a lot of new things happening, and I believe we'll be growing much faster, much better in the coming days. Thank you very much. God bless us.
No, thank you. And that's what basically I was trying to say, that every crisis offers some opportunity. And that's basically now we need to leverage on that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot. Bye.